Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez joining you here. By the way, Brian Murphy, normally joining us, is not joining us today because he is on his way to Tampa, as I'm sure several of you are, getting ready for the 2019 Gasparilla Bowl.
He decommitted last second from doing this show today.
He did? Yeah, he decommitted and committed to doing probably a Marshall show.
He was verbally committed to doing it, and then he just, the last second, changed.
So we've got a little bit of talk about National Signing Day. Well, it's not even National Signing Day. It's early signing day, right? National Signing Day is still officially in February. Talk about the new recruiting class a little bit coming in. We will dive a little bit of the bowl game, talk some hoops, and also a little feature that we're going to be doing through the holiday week to try and to look back on the decade in a bunch of different UCF sports, and we'll preview some of that for you. So this is a relatively short show. Now, our actual preview show for the game against Marshall, which again is Monday afternoon, will go out on Sunday morning. Okay, so mark your calendars out there. Remember to refresh your feeds just to give us an extra 24 hours of preview, and then I'm thinking we'll probably do a post bowl game show as well on Monday too. So, or at least on Monday evening. So remember to follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com. UCF_Banneret, Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret, and let us dive right in. Eric Lopez, it's our favorite day of the whole year, isn't it? The now early signing period, UCF football added 17 players, including some interesting local signees, some interesting non-local signees. A lot of South Florida kids, especially on the defensive side of the football. Randy Shannon will do that for you. Jordan Davis, the younger brother of Gabriel Davis, a 6'4" tight end, is coming to UCF. So is Stretch Creedle, a 6'4" receiver out of Carver High School in Columbus, Georgia. UCF also got a lineman out of Germany, along with a couple of other guys. This guy, Paul Rubelt, is 6'10", 300 pounds. I wonder if Johnny Dawkins was paying attention to that. Some linemen out of Key West as well. And, just kind of looks, kind of filling some spots here and there. But I'm not interested in that, Eric Lopez. What I'm interested in is the reaction to it, which it has been, tepid, shall we say. Now, you know me, and we both hate recruiting news because it's ridiculous. Chris Hayes of the Orlando Sentinel, however, wrote that UCF's class was ranked number 4 in the American behind Cincinnati, Tulane, and East Carolina. Gave UCF a C+. I know. Fold the program. It's all over. Back to mediocrity we go. Partly based on the fact that UCF, quote, lost, end quote, Mike Wright, the quarterback out of Atlanta.
What are we gonna do at quarterback?
I have no idea. Well, exactly. So he decided to go to Vanderbilt because he looked ahead of him and saw Dylan Gabriel and saw him, playing really well at UCF this year and pretty much sealing up the job for the next 2 to 3 years at the very least. Not really a surprise there. Give me some insight here, Eric. How do you the people who are freaking out about this friggin' recruiting thing, why should they just calm the hell down?
Because it really doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where. Here's my question to everybody that's into this crap. And I don't know if people notice this, but the coverage, even ESPN has toned down the coverage. It used to be that this thing it was unavoidable on television.
Yeah. ESPNU used to be on all day with recruiting news. And they used to have all the live signings and everything. Yeah.
I mean, even like the main ESPNs don't even pay attention to it. And with the transfer portal, now in play, if you miss on certain spots on your recruiting class, you just go fix it in your transfer portal. So, like, people that are worried about, well, there's no quarterback in this class for UCF, what are they going to do depth-wise? They're probably just going to get a kid that's going to transfer to come here anyway. Same with other positions that you might think are lacking, defensive line, for example.
So, in other words, what you're saying is what you don't get in the draft, you can shore up via free agency, basically.
Yes, that's a great analogy, and I think that's what college football has become. And I just don't think that recruiting classes, and I know it's this is so controversial to say, I don't think it's the end of the world. The other thing is, you've done the research on this, because I know you've written for Banneret over the last, you've broken down previous classes,
right?
UCF, and I think you can confirm this because this has been discussed too. Everybody acts like every kid in every recruiting class is going to be great. That's not accurate. In fact, it's really a low percentage of players, right?
Very low.
That are going to end up being good, right? What is it, 30, 35% of the classes are the ones you're hoping to hit?
Well, it depends on how you view, like how do you term success? Okay, so like what would be your when you use the word success, a successful recruit, and I'm asking you, what is what would you consider a successful recruit?
A kid that starts and contributes to the program and helps win. Does
he have to have graduated?
No, not necessarily. If the guy is able to turn pro, for example, like Gabe Davis decides to leave early, I think that's still a successful, obviously, recruit. Blake Bortles comes. I mean, Blake Bortles is probably the example of why people shouldn't flip out about recruiting classes. You were around that time working there. Did anybody say, man, guys, we got our franchise quarterback in Blake Bortles? Nobody said that.
No, he was an afterthought when he came to UCF. He was, yeah. So yeah, I've gone through the research. I've gone through classes, all the classes since 2004, because that's how far the data goes, and it all comes down to player development. Now, you could say, yeah, but you have to have good enough players who are talented to develop. Of course you do. But when you have guys coming in that were max 3 stars, some of them 2 stars, who end up becoming NFL level players and draftees, as UCF has had over the years, all right, you tell me how important, quote, recruiting, end quote, is, all right? Because these are players who have rolled through the system and gotten better every year. Some of them rather late, too. And you were asking about, like, what's the hit rate. So I would consider a successful recruit, somebody who was so good that they left early, or they spent all 4 years and graduated, because that's really what they're coming to UCF to do, right, is get their degree. And, oh, by the way, play football.
But again, though, I think they have to produce on the field. You can't just sit on the bench. I mean, that's great, but that doesn't help.
Well, I mean, it
unless you want to. I mean, if you want to really reach out and say, well, hey, look, they helped on the scout team, or whatever.
Well, I mean, there could be some other issues behind that too. Nagging injuries that doesn't, if they were a contributor to the team, they were on that they walk on senior day. To me, that's a successful recruit. You got your degree, you completed what you were supposed to do, because sometimes you don't really have that much control. Like, for example, let's say you come in and you're like the number one. You're the number 2.
If the kid doesn't play and he gets a degree, that's not.
Well, no, that's not. Well, no. Here's my point. What if you play? You come in and you start a few games as a freshman. Then all of a sudden, a freshman the next year comes in, takes your spot, and it's just an all world player. Okay.
Well, you didn't pan out. I mean, you didn't pan out. I mean, that's.
But you stayed all 4. But you stayed all 4 years. You got your degree, and you at least contributed.
Well, I think those days are over in the landscape now, because I think now what happens is if you're not playing, you're transferring.
Oh yeah. Oh, well, I think we're going to see that, and I think the data is going to change over time because of the transfer portal.
But I think you brought up a great point, and that's the key word: player development. It really doesn't matter how talented the kid is because some loser is out there in a high school stadium saying, "Man, this kid's a 4-star." Like, doesn't matter if this kid's talented coming in. Everybody, this is the thing. Everybody in college today, then signing day, got talented players, talented athletes. Okay. So what do you do with them now?
Right.
All right. And I think you can you grab Mark Daniels had a great tweet Wednesday about signing class and the success that UCF has had in the last few years and what their average recruiting class is. I think he said it was 58. All right.
Here's what he had. Yeah, UCF's last 4 years, the average class rank. I got the tweet right here from the Beat of Sports. Okay, last 4 years, the average rank is 58th. Okay, last 4 years, UCF has gone in that same span of time. UCF has gone 40-11, been to 2 New Year's Six bowl games, 4 bowls, 2 conference titles. Boise State the last 4 years, their average class rank is 60th, 2 spots below UCF. Last 4 years, they've gone 43-10, 2 Mountain West titles, 3 title games, and 4 bowls. So, I don't know. How would you rank those recruiting classes after the fact, right?
Right. And let me compare that to a couple of brand names, okay? Texas, all right? And Urban Meyer has brought this up. We did a great job this year for Fox. Because Urban Meyer, you basically took Urban Meyer agrees with you. He says if your player development is critical, to your recruiting. Here's Texas's recruiting rankings, okay? Texas, 2015, they ranked the 10th best recruiting class in the country. 2016, 7th best recruiting class in the country. 2017, 25th. 2018, 3rd. 2019, 3rd. You know what Texas has accomplished during all that time?
Bupkis.
No Big 12 titles. One kid has gone out in the first round of the NFL draft. I believe UCF has that many as well.
Right.
Mike Hughes. And they've only produced 13 guys into the NFL draft since 2015. In comparison, Alabama has 46. Ohio State has 40. It's great to have a top 5 recruiting class, top 10, top whatever, but if you don't develop them, okay, to helping you win conference championships and bowl games and national titles, or produce them to the NFL, because that's what the kid wants, right? The kid wants to go to school to help to play right away, to help to win championships, get exposure, and get ready and develop to play at the next level. Well, Texas has better recruiting classes than UCF, and yet UCF's been more successful. Why? Because UCF's done a better job of developing players.
Right.
Because they get players that maybe are not the highest rated guys, but they fit what they're doing, and they develop and help them produce for the next level, or produce to help them win championships in American and bowl games and things like that. And that's why you have to give credit to the Nick Sabans of the world, which people don't like to do because they don't like him, but that's fine. But one of the reasons why Nick Saban is arguably the greatest coach of all time is not because he's this brilliant X's and O's guy. Is because he brings these players to Alabama. He recruits them, yes, no question. But he develops these guys to the point where they have depth. They are able to be in it every year for the national title, and they go on to the next level in the NFL. Same thing with Urban Meyer. Same thing with Clemson and Dabo Swinney, what he's built there. It's not just because they're great recruiters. Hell, Florida State's had great recruiting classes the last handful of years. What has that done for them the last few years? Barely make a bowl game. In fact, they missed a bowl game. So I think player development, that's the word that you use that has to be underlined.
Yeah.
It's not about who you got on the team now. It's about what do you do with them and what do those players do moving forward. That's the key to the success of these classes and moving forward.
One last note on the 11 seasons between 2004 and 2014. Okay, that we looked at that all the players have graduated or moved on. I'll give you an over/under as to the highest percentage of players in an individual class who either stayed all 4 years and graduated and or went to the NFL. We're considered basically 3 stars or above according to this ranking system that I kind of put together. where the bare minimum is you played and finished your career at UCF, and that's your 3-star, and then your 5-star is like star player, NFL pick, may not have stayed all 4 years. What was the of those 11 years? I'll give you a guess. Which was the highest percentage in a single year?
2010, 2009?
Well, 2014 is the year, but you guess the percentage.
35.
70%.
Wow.
70%. That was 2014. 17 players, 13 of them actually either graduated from UCF and or were good enough that they left early for the NFL, made all conference, something like that. 2010 was 65, 2004 was 63, 2006 was 61. Okay, so those are your hits. On average, it's a shade over 50% out of that entire
50-50. You got to hit 50%.
Every kid is 50. It is literally a 50-50 proposition. So, yeah. I mean, my thought on that is player development. It's all about player development, and that's how good your coaches, and that comes down to your coaching staff.
Right, and this is, and going back to this year's class, this is why Randy Shannon is on the staff. Really,
right.
More so than being the defensive coach, to be honest, is recruiting in South Florida and down in Miami. Why? Because with all due respect to Central Florida high school football, it's junior varsity compared to down south. And that was proven again in the high school state championships when teams from Dade, Broward, Palm Beach went 7 for 7 in state championships. They just produce better players. There's more talent down there than there is in Central Florida. There's been issues that have been brought up about Central Florida high school in particular about the lack of pay for coaches, and that as a result that's hurt development of players. In fact, Urban Meyer went on with Colin Cowherd and talked about that in depth, that Florida has some issues with pay as far as coaches, and as a result, the talent, if Florida is not fully developed, so when they come to college, you still have they're kind of raw in some cases. There's exceptions to that, and he pointed out to schools in South Florida that are already more developed because they have better coaches. They spend more money on it. So the fact, if you're asking me, Jeff, to just bet here, I'm betting on those kids that they got from South Florida that they're going to pan out more than other kids in this class, just because of the pedigree and just that's how they're produced down there in South Florida. So that's the thing that I like a lot about this class. We'll see how that pans out. Now I'm going to put on my sports talk radio host hat for a second here, Jeffrey.
Just a second?
Just a second. My old days of hat. Let me ask you this question to the audience as well. If we didn't rank these recruiting classes, all right? We just didn't recruit. We didn't rank them. We just said, hey, this is your class. This is it. No rankings. Would anybody care?
Yeah, some people. Like heavy donors would care.
How much of this is influenced, though? Don't you think a lot of this is influenced by the rankings, right? We get sucked into this. Like
the rankings have way too much influence. Way too much influence.
It's funny because, right, we complain in August, oh, these preseason polls are a joke. Well, how can you rank teams? We haven't played a game yet. We should wait. But the reason there's preseason polls is because people get excited about it. They get sucked into it. Like, oh, hey, that's number 10. We like polls as people. And I think it's the same thing with signing day. I don't think if we didn't have rankings of recruiting classes, I think people would you would have your diehards are like, oh, okay, that's great. I think 99% of people wouldn't care. But because there's a number next to that class, people are going to react either positively or negatively based on that ranking.
Yeah.
Like your point, like with all due respect to Hayes, and I have no issues with Hayes. I've talked to him, and he's a nice guy and all. How do you grade that? Like, what do you mean it's a C+? Like, they haven't played a snap in college. How do you know? Like,
right.
What does that mean? Like,
how many of those guys are even going to play a snap in college? That's the other thing. You got some guys who is going through the history of it. Some guys come in as like 4 stars. They don't even show up to school. Right.
We had UCF. I mean, the infamous one, and I'm drawing a blank. We had the linebacker that was like a 4-star from Colorado, Willingham, I think it was his name, and he never played a snap here.
Never played a snap. Yeah.
And the thing that doesn't happen enough, okay, and this is what drives me nuts about this. What really, when these classes should be ranked, is like 4 years from now. That's when you should rank them.
Like what we do on blackandgoldbanneret.com.
Correct. No, I'm serious. And some, ESPN from time to time, what they'll do is, hey, look at the teams that won the national title. And it really matters. Yeah, but you don't tell me like the rankings of teams that go 5 and 7.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy every single time.
Right. So I think that's the better time. That's when you can rank these classes, but we don't do that. Now, in fairness, this also happens with the NFL draft, right? We're going to do this in April or May, whenever the NFL draft is. People are going to grade your New York Giants, Jeffrey, how they did in the draft without even the kid taking a snap in the NFL, when in reality the draft should be judged 5 years from now. But we don't do that because we need to know now.
Like you, Mr. Lopez, with my guy Daniel Jones, okay?
Well, I'm just going to point out Eli Manning's looked better in the last.
Knock it off.
I love Eli. Hey, I'm an Eli supporter. But anyway, but the point is, but that's a great point though. Let's forget the Daniel Jones. I actually want to bring up the Saquon Barkley. People were second guessing the Giants, passing on Sam Darnold, and taking Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley's the way better football player. Like, what are you talking about? Just because you value the quarterback position more doesn't mean you have to take the kid. But because you graded Sam Darnold higher than Saquon Barkley, you're going to judge that? I think that's too much. You're right. There's too much influence on that. And so I would say that people just need to relax on that stuff. And I don't think this class is done, because I think there's going to be guys that are going to transfer in come the new year. And let me ask the last thing I'll say. I know we got to move on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if coaches like this December signing day. Because I think one thing that hurt UCF clearly a little bit was Jeff Levy leaving to Ole Miss. And nobody blames him. It's a great move. He's going to call plays over there. It's a great move. If signing day was in February like it used to be only, well, then you would have had time to find your coordinator, and maybe you get the kid back, maybe you don't. Who knows? But what's happening in college football now, like you got like Mike Norvell and all these other coaches are getting hired at new places and are scrambling 3 to 5 days just to make sure they have a class. I think that's bad for the sport. And I think, I don't know if this has been good for the sport overall. Some might argue, hey, you've got your classes, but like February is irrelevant now, right? And signing day, like I think I saw the stat where like 85% of your recruiting classes are signed in December
Well, I think the problem is, so the coaches fought for this early signing period for a long time. Even George O'Leary said that he was a year in and year out said the same thing. I wish we had an early signing period. And when they finally got it, I think it's sort of one of those things where you like, be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. Because they got it, but it happens at this time during coaching transition. I think that the coaches, I'll have to talk to more coaches about this, but I think if we ask the coaches, they would say, yeah, we want the early signing period, but we didn't want it this late. We wanted it earlier. I would be interested to talk to a bunch of coaches. Maybe we'll do this in the offseason and ask them, if you could wave a magic wand and have the early and change the date of the early signing period, where would it be? And I would bet you they would rather have the early signing period before opening day, because what you can do is lock up your next year's recruiting class, and then you don't have to babysit them through the football season. You can focus on the football season, and then the spring becomes transfer portal season. And if kids change their mind, or an injury happens or whatnot, then you can work on that through the transfer portal. But you're not having to spin all those plates at once. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm curious to find out from coaches. I mean, people are giving South Florida a hard time because I guess they have the quote unquote worst recruiting class in the American Conference. Well, Jeff Scott just got there.
Right.
He just got there. So,
he hasn't. In some ways, he hasn't even gotten there. He's probably living in a hotel right now.
Right. I mean, and there's probably, and it tells you, I think there was not a lot of great talent coming from the Charlie Strong class. I mean, so I just think it's a hard thing. Now, the counter to that might be, hey, the players might like it because, hey, they're guaranteed of getting that scholarship. They don't have to wait 2 months more and maybe get flipped, things like that. So, and maybe some coaches like that, the fact that, hey, they don't have to worry about a kid flipping in February type of thing. So, and maybe if the kid flips in December, now you have an extra couple of months to recover from that instead of in February where you're like, oh, crap,
Right.
So maybe there's pluses and minuses, but I am kind of curious to your point, like how everybody really feels about it, and if there's going to be some tweaks about this down the road.
Yeah, well, I would love to talk to some of the coaches in the offseason about this. Anyway, we got some coverage from Murph on the signees on the site. I'm also going to take a look back at the 2015 class year this week. Some interesting names came through that 2015 class. This is a class that signed right before the winless season. Neville Clark was part of that class. Tyler Hudanik, Brandon Hayes, Pat Jasinski, Taj McGowan, a lot of interesting names through that class. So I'm gonna recap that for you as well, doing just what you said. And of course, don't forget the Gasparilla Bowl in Tampa in 4 days, 2:30 p.m. kick on Monday. UCF against Marshall. Lots of events through Tampa. I know that UCF has their own site where they're sending everybody to go through the whole. To go through all of the for all the bowl events and things they're doing, and I do say that UCF does or rather ESPN does a very good job in making these really good events, and so it's definitely if you're heading down there, it's definitely worth checking out. They got the Busch Gardens Day is actually today, where both teams are hanging out at Busch Gardens. They're doing the beach invasion on Saturday, a pep rally on Sunday, and then game day is Monday. So make sure you check it out. If you're down there, have a good time. Be safe down there, and we will preview the football game between UCF and Marshall on Sunday morning. So be there for that. All right. Quick break. Come back. We'll talk about basketball and some other news on this relatively abbreviated Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
We're back here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez with you. Murph's got the day off. Remember, we'll have another show on Sunday previewing the bowl game. But first,
make sure you follow him. By the way, make sure you follow him on Twitter because he's in Tampa. He's covering UCF. That's why he's not with us as we're recording this episode. He's in Tampa, obviously getting all media availability and all the bowl festivities.
Right. Spokes_Murphy on Twitter. Spokes_Murphy on Twitter. Make sure you follow him. Make sure you follow us, Eric Lopez Elo, Jeff _Sharon. Make sure you follow Luke Saris at Luke Saris SBN. Make sure you follow Derek Warden at _DS Warden. He's pumped out some really good photo galleries over the last month, and you really should check him out. Jeremy Brenner at Jeremy Brenner for your UCF news, especially as it pertains to the NFL, and also if you happen to be a Houston Rockets fan. And also Anthony Lenahan, Squints15 on Twitter, to Squints_15. So let's flip over to basketball, UCF men's basketball. We will start with real quick. Last night got a bit of a scare. Last night was Wednesday night. Got a bit of a scare from Bethune-Cookman, of all people. Nice got the victory to go to 9-2, but 70-65 was the score. And this is the last non-conference game before they head on the road to Oklahoma. And then the game after Oklahoma is the conference opener against Temple on New Year's Eve. But UCF trailed by 13 in this game at the half, 34-21, and then ripped off 49 second-half points to win 70-65. Leading scorers for UCF, Cesar De Jesus was 17 to lead UCF, actually to lead all scorers except for Malik Maitland, who had 23 off the bench for Cookman. UCF held Bethune to just 33% from the field in the second half, while the Knights shot 64% in the second half. That's after a 25% first half. Brandon Mahan was in double figures off the bench with 11 points. Colin Smith had 10 and fouled out of the game, actually. And Dazon Ingram, 9 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists. Kind of one of those like mini LeBron games where he kind of fills up the stat sheet once again. So, and Darren Green was actually struggling from the outside, as was Matt Milan and Frank Burt. So really the outside shot is what abandoned UCF. Those three guys combined were 2 of 18 from beyond the arc. UCF as a team was 5 of 24 from three-point range. But Elo, this game was bizarre, and a lot of people were freaking out. Down 13 at the half, but then they ripped off 49 in the second half. Encouraging, discouraging? I don't know how you would characterize this one.
I would just say it's a game. You won, you move on.
A win is a win is a win.
Yeah, well, especially this season in college basketball. If anybody's followed the sport this year, it's one of the most craziest thing I've ever seen in this sport. I've followed college basketball since the late 80s. I've never seen a season like this where everybody's losing to everybody. And
it is a weird year. You look at like the top 25 and who's lost already. I mean, it's some of the
bizarre losses. I mean, Kentucky lost to an Evansville. Duke losing to Stephen F. Austin. LSU
at the buzzer in Cameron, nonetheless.
Correct. LSU on Wednesday night lost to East Tennessee State at home. Cincinnati with a debacle loss to Colgate at home in one of the most just craziest ways to lose the game. I've never seen
Cincinnati completely blew a game to a toothpaste company. I mean, it's weird.
And then bounced back a handful of days later and beat Tennessee.
Right.
So my point is, this is not a year where you should be nitpicking wins or losses because everybody's beating everybody. I don't think there's any great teams out there, and I think we're seeing that. So I take the win. I watched the first half. It was ugly. There's no, sugarcoating it. But they did bounce back. They got the win. And I think the big thing I take away from this game is that Mahan – I thought was tremendous, gotten double figures in scoring, and Dejon Ingram had a big second half. And I think that's important for this team moving forward because even through all the wins prior to this game, they both have not been much of a factor offensively the last few games. So I think they need those two guys to contribute offensively alongside a Colin Smith, alongside the Jesus, who's probably been the best, most improved player from last year. I mean, he's been a really nice player, had a heck of a year so far. You got the two kids in Darren Green and Dre Fuller who are freshmen, and they're going to be up and down. And so I think that was pivotal that Mahan and Ingram stepped up big time. And even Matt Milan, who has struggled with his shot, I thought gave him some quality minutes in that Bethune game with some rebounding. He hit a couple of shots. So I think that's the encouraging thing I'm going to take away from this instead of worried about, oh, my God, they almost lost to Bethune. Those are the things that I look at more than because I think those things matter now moving forward more than, hey, what happened against Bethune.
8 guys played a minimum of 16 minutes in this game. So Johnny Dawkins is really using his rotations frequently and trying to get the right mix for whatever matchup he has in there. Now, we did find out after the game that I don't want to say UCF is going to be shorthanded in the second half of the season because they never really had him to begin with. Uat Alak, who is the transfer from TCU, supposedly a quality big man, he apparently is academically ineligible, and he won't play, and he will not play for UCF this season. And a lot of people are looking at that saying, oh, man, that's a real blow. But my take on that is, well, you're already developing a pretty good chemistry in the guys that are there now, okay? And so to throw – I mean, sure, it might have been nice to have an extra big body in there, but that's a double-edged sword too because if you throw this new guy who's going to demand the ball on the inside all of a sudden, that might throw a wrench into what you've been working on to the tune of 9 wins in 11 games so far. Now, I mean – we could see them get completely outsized against Oklahoma and then at conference play and then like, oh, well, so much for that. But it's unfortunate. I mean, obviously you got to get the college part of college basketball right. But I'm not exactly shedding a tear so much on this. It's like, oh, look, it didn't work out. Okay, what about you on that one?
Yeah, it's hard to say. He never played, so
right.
it's not like you don't
How do we know?
Right. I mean, like you said, how would he have fit in on this team? Would it could have helped? I think so, probably. But
By the way, Avery Diggs has been great. I mean, in terms of being a big man out there. Ibrahim Famuke Doumbia as well as getting some mop up minutes here and there.
It would be different. It would have been different if he was playing and then he was ineligible. Right? Like if he played games and then he was ineligible, that's different. That's now you got to adjust.
And if he was averaging like 15 and 7, and then all of a sudden, oh geez, but he never played.
We don't know. It is what it is. But this team has playing and they move forward. So if anything, now there's closure on that. And you move forward. You know who you have, and you move forward and you play and you try to get better. And now you get ready for a big test against an Oklahoma team that's going to be very motivated because they've lost 2 in a row. They lost at Wichita State. They lost at Creighton. They're 7-3. They're a dynamic offense. They're 7-3 on the year, and I think this is a fascinating game because I think now this is a good barometer to see where this team is prior to going into conference play. Jeffrey.
Well, OU is 7-3, like you said. Losers of 2 straight on the road, including a game against a team in the American, Wichita, 80-75 was the final there. They start conference play on January 4th. This is actually their second to last non-conference game. This game will be in Norman, hostile environment. Their leading scorer right now,
Austin Reeves.
Austin Reeves,
7 per game. Kristen Doolittle averages 17 a game as well with 9 rebounds. Brady Manak, 14 points. I mean, this is by far the best team UCF's played so far.
Yeah, definitely, and obviously the Big 10 or the Big 12 competition that they're a part of it makes a big difference. But even though I think Oklahoma's non-conference schedule has been very, very soft, but aside from Stanford and Missouri, who they're 1-1 against, they really haven't done much against anybody.
Wichita State's good. Creighton's pretty good. Big East. I mean, it's not. I think there's still questions. I mean, I think Oklahoma right now could be a fringe NCAA tournament team. Lon Kruger, obviously the head coach, who's former Gator head coach, former Atlanta Hawk head coach. He's done a good job at Oklahoma. What they don't have that Buddy Hield guy, right? They don't have a Trae Young, although I think Trae Young's the most overrated basketball player out there, but that's a whole other story. Feel free to make your teammates better once in a while. They don't have that guy, franchise blue chipper that can carry you to a Final Four like Buddy Hield did. As good as Austin Reeves is, as good as Doolittle is, they're not at that level, and I think that's what's missing from Oklahoma. But that being said, they're still talented enough, and I think it's a good test for them because UCF's going to see a bunch of teams similar in the league play. So I actually like the way Coach Dawkins scheduled this to have Oklahoma prior to your conference opener at home against Temple on New Year's Eve, because now you know what you're going to have to work on after Oklahoma, for good or for bad. I wouldn't overreact to the result one way or the other. I think it's more of, okay, where do we stand now? How does our defense match up against a team like Oklahoma that has guys that can put the ball in the basket? Probably the best offensive team they're going to have seen here. Oklahoma averages about 76 points per game. So I don't think UCF wants to get into a game in the 70s, 80s. I think that's not in their best interest. I think they would prefer this game to be in the 60s and play defense. That's the identity that it's been under Coach Dawkins here at UCF. So I think those are the things that I'm looking forward to seeing, to see how this team handles being on the road. How can they defend a team like Oklahoma? Can they rebound? And how do they execute offensively on the road against a team like Oklahoma?
Right, and that game, by the way, 2 p.m., and it will be televised on officially Fox Sports Oklahoma. Has anyone picked that up locally? I mean, I guess I haven't seen anything on that. That would be no, it wouldn't be an ESPN Plus game because it's Fox, right? Yeah, so I don't know where
it might be ESPN 3, maybe ESPN Plus. I don't know. We'll have to.
I don't know where we'd be able to pick that up.
Check your game notes on UCFnights.com on Friday when it comes out.
Yeah. So.
And we know this. It'll be on the radio on 96.9.
Yep, that's right. We have also checking on the women's team. They finally their long break came to an end with a home game against Quinnipiac, and they looks like they took care of business. Now Quinnipiac is only 1-6 coming in, but this is what you're supposed to do to a 1-6 team. 80-58 was the final. UCF women's basketball gets the victory. How about Brittany Smith? 25 minutes, 6 of 7 from the field, 18 points, 10 rebounds, and she was 6 of 7 at the line. Best game she's played as a UCF Knight yet. And she was also picked up by Masni Kaba, who had 13 points, 3 blocks, 2 steals, 2 assists, 7 rebounds, and a partridge in a pear tree. Let's see here. KK Wright once again came off the bench to score 16 on 6 of 12, including 4 of 4 at the line. 4 Knights were in double figures. Also, Cortasia Sanders pitched in with another dozen. As UCF shot, where's the number? There it is, 42% from the field, and held Quinnipiac to 38. And just really took it to him on the glass, by the way. 22-4, UCF on the second chance. On the second chance opportunities, UCF out-rebounded them 43-29. They just did what they were supposed to do to an MAAC team. And that got the UCF women above 500 now. They're at 5-4. And it still feels, though, Eric, like they're trying to fight off the injury bug a little bit, especially with KK coming off the bench still. But they've got a holiday tournament coming up on Friday and Saturday, St. Mary's and Wright State, respectively, at home in the afternoon before we head into the Christmas week. So, and then they play Central Michigan. We don't see them again for another 9 days when they play Central Michigan. So, I think they kind of feel like they're kind of treading water through the non-conference play, getting ready to pounce come conference time, don't you?
Yeah, but believe it or not, folks, someone here is going to press a panic button, and it's not Jeffrey for a change. Who knew?
Are you going to press the panic button?
Yeah, I am. I'm
okay.
going to tell you why. And it's not really, I agree with you. They're kind of treading water. That's kind of a problem. I mean, the first RPI came out in women's basketball this week.
Okay.
Kind of got lost in the shuffle because the net, everybody's favorite, the net came out in men's basketball, which that one, we should wait. We're not even going to discuss that because that thing you got to wait a few weeks before it sorts itself out because it's kind of crazy.
Right.
Women's basketball. And normally I don't get too caught up in the RPI this early, but this is a trend that I do not like. Okay. Now here's the positive. UConn is number 1. I know it's a shocker. UConn's number 1 in the RPI. All right, for the league. That's good. Big shock. I know. And 9-0. You know who the second highest rated RPI team is right now in the league?
In the American?
Yeah.
I got to admit I cheated and I looked this up. I believe it's Temple, and they're at number 67.
67. They're 6-5 overall. 67. UCF's at 99 as we speak. Houston's 108. South Florida 119. Memphis 126. Cincinnati 135. Wichita State 141. My point is, here's my concern. Where are the quality games in the league? That's where I'm worried about. Like, where is this? How are you going to get quality wins in this league if you don't beat UConn? I'm surprised and disappointed that, it'd be different. Like, hey, there's teams in the fit. And look, obviously, as you win more games, you move up. So some of these, you hope that some of these teams kind of get hot here, finish strong, and start moving up. But I'm concerned, Jeffrey, that I don't know if this league right now is more. It might not be more than a one-bid league this year unless somebody really gets hot here and goes on a run in conference play similar to what UCF did last year, where they did not lose. I think they only lost one conference game outside of the UConn games. That's my concern. You mentioned the treading water. Like, boy, I mean, I wish we would have had that UCLA game back or not. So I think it's pivotal for this team to finish strong in non-conference, win out, and then start conference really well, because there might be a thin line here as far as how to make the NCAA tournament, unfortunately, for this league.
Yeah.
And it's disappointing. We had Coach Abe on, and we talked about it. Like, I think this was an important year for the league to show that they're going to be fine without UConn when UConn departs for the Big East. And man,
I'm not seeing it.
When I saw the numbers come out, I'm like, oh boy. So
well, I think
I'm concerned. I'm very concerned.
I don't know that I don't think we can evaluate the top half of the league as bad just yet, because, like you said, it still feels like the RPI also has to shake itself out a little better. But the bottom of the league looks really bad. like really bad. I mean, I'm looking at Tulsa, whose RPI is 276. How bad is that? Well, there are 351 teams. And not far away from them, by the way, is ECU at 272. That's nah. And these are teams that have 3 wins on their schedule that are hovering around teams that have 1 and in some cases no wins on their schedule. That is really scary. SMU's at 200. That's going to hurt you. The teams on the bottom look like they're going to be really bad in the American. Now, I hope I'm wrong.
That's a problem. And that's a problem because that caps you. That caps you. And that's my point. Even if some of the teams like a Cincinnati, South Florida, UCF, I think will step up and their RPIs will move up. Let's say they're only in the 50s, let's say. Well, now all of a sudden you got to play a team that's in the 150, 200. You better win that game. And even if you win that game, you're not going to improve that much. That's my concern. Whereas last year UCF, they were pretty high already in the RPI. So they had a really good non-conference year from a wins-loss standpoint. And even though they didn't have a, quote, marquee win, they played like Quinnipiac, for example. They're usually good, actually. But the problem is this year Quinnipiac's a rebuilding year. So now all of a sudden UCF gets hurt by that. And that's kind of the luck of the draw sometimes with the schedule. And that's I think this at most. I think this league's a 2-bid league. They got and the problem is normally you're like, well, hey, there's always the conference tournament. That's at Mohican at UConn for 1 more year. So,
right.
Yeah, good. I wouldn't depend on that.
Have fun with that.
That's the interesting dynamic. Now, the good news for UCF is they do play UConn twice, and that's why I've always said it's a positive. Even if you lose both of those games, you're going to improve RPI. And if you're able to somehow upset, that's a heck of a trump card to have. I'll tell you that.
Well, St. Mary's and then Wright State are on the slate. Actually, Wright State is right next to UCF, actually 2 spots ahead of them right now in the RPI. The Wright State's at 97, UCF's at 99. I was looking for St. Mary's. So they're actually struggling themselves at 153, at least at the moment. Again, take that RPI ranking with a grain of salt. But if you're UCF now. It's kind of like first weekend of the NCAA thing. Take care of business. All right? Knock the 2 of them out. Take care of Central Michigan 9 days later. Rest up. Get healthy. Conference play starts January 5th against ECU. And like we said earlier, ECU, they are not good. 272 to start the season, and UCF gets them at home. And then they go to Cincinnati at 135, and that's before playing UConn. So it's your chance to kind of pad the numbers a little bit before you face the Huskies at home.
Yeah, the biggest thing you got to do is improve the win-loss record because that does help your RPI. I mean, that's part of the reason why their UCF's down is they're just got above 500 as you mentioned. If you win more, you'll move up in the RPI. But man, I just think there's not a lot of room for error, unfortunately.
They win those 5 games, they're 10-4 heading into the UConn game. So,
good goal.
Yeah, it's a good goal to have. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 of those 5 are at home, and the one is at Cincinnati. They got 7 days before that game, so it's not like it's a back-to-back road trip. So, all right, so that's the women's basketball slate for you. Some volleyball news: McKenna Melville earning AVCA All-American honorable mention. She was also AVCA All-Regional. I didn't think it was possible for her to improve, but she did this year, and is just, for my money, the best two-weight player that we've seen at UCF in a very, very long time, who's not a middle. Jordan Pingle, McKenna Melville. By the way, back-to-back honorable mentions for McKenna Melville. She is the first UCF player to do that since Delana Sarden, and Delana did it 3 years in a row, 2012, 13, and 14. Hey, Delana, hope you're listening. And then, of course, Jordan Pingle got honorable mention last year as well. So congrats to McKenna on that one. I can't wait to see what she's going to come up with next year because she just gets better. She just gets better and better And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I mean, first, shout out to Sean Asher, Media Relations at Volleyball. Did a great press release. He listed every honorable mention UCF's ever had, going back to Jenny Frank in 2003, who was the first in program history. So I think that salute to him on that. Here's my question to you.
Okay.
Because also it was historic. Congrats, by the way. Jordan Thompson, first team All-American.
As she should be.
But, it shocked me to learn that she hadn't been. She was like third team All-American, I believe, last year, and then was an honorable mention her one other year. But so certainly earned first team All-American. I mean, best player ever. So here's my question to you. What do you think will it take? And let's be real about this. A lot of this is somewhat political because a lot of players that play in the brand volleyball programs will always get benefit of the doubt and end up on the first, second, and third teams. That being said, in the next 2 years, what's the key for McKenna to maybe become the first UCF volleyball player ever to be either a third team All-American, a second team, maybe first team? I think she's got the potential to do that. What's the key there to take that step?
Be a senior, I think. The reason why I say that is because of what you just mentioned, Jordan Thompson. All those years that she was not a first team All-American, including last year where she was just as phenomenal as she was this year. It's hard to be a first teamer when you're an underclassman in a non-power league. It just is. And look at the numbers that Jordan had to put up this year alone just to get that. Mind-blowing kill numbers, mind-blowing swing numbers. It's, I've looked at the scorecards with the coaches, and we're looking at her like that's not even right. Like, how do you ask a player to do that many times?
Do you think the team's success also like Cincinnati?
Massive factor. Yes.
Yeah.
Massive factor.
And I hate that, by the way, for the record, but I think you're right. I hate that. I think it should be based on if Cincinnati loses in the second round to Pitt or in the first round, I don't think that means that Jordan Thompson's a lesser player, and I think she should have still been a first team All-American. But I think you're right.
Well, I don't know if that's the case, really. I think it more has to do with you got to kind of roll through that regular season essentially unencumbered. So that everyone kind of sits up and around the country who votes on this sits up taking notes. Oh wow, UCF is 23-2 or something like that. You know what I mean?
But the way they kind of announced the award, because they announced this right prior to the Final Four in volleyball. So for example, let's go hypothetical. Let's say McKenna Melville has a monster match and they upset Florida and they get to the Sweet 16. Maybe that gets her a third-team All-American. I don't think that should be the case. I think it should be for the overall body of work, like you said, the regular season. But I do wonder if some of these voters are impacted. And we would have to ask coaches, and we got to talk to a lot of coaches this offseason, Jeff, make a note.
Yeah.
I do wonder if the postseason has influenced some of this, because I agree with you. You bring it up. What was the difference between Jordan Thompson this year and last year? I mean, she was still the same great player. Now, you could argue that Cincinnati won the regular season title, whereas last year they didn't. Maybe that's a factor, perhaps. But, does the fact that she went to the Sweet 16 impacted her being on first team, whereas if they didn't, maybe she's a second teamer? Who knows? I hope not, but my mind does wonder about that. And I wonder that for McKenna here in the next 2 years, if her chances of being a first, second, or third team All-American might be tied into what UCF not only does in the regular season, but in the postseason.
Well, to a person, if you ask any of the coaches in the league, on any team, UCF, Tulane, you name it, if you say, what'd you think about Jordan getting first team All-America this year and not last year, they'd be like, it's about doggone time. Come on, what are we waiting for here? So, that was my thought on that. As far as McKenna's concerned, it's not like her name isn't out there. It is. She's in the Team USA system. We've seen 2 years worth of her prowess as UCF has, had 2 very good years these past 2 seasons, 32-2 in conference combined. And in addition to that, she's been the catalyst for that. Okay, so she's not an unknown quantity, and I think that now we've seen her 2 years in a row, people are going to start to really notice. And then again, it comes down to how well the team does in the regular season. These last 2 years.
The other thing that will help her too is that Jordan Thompson's no longer in the league because she's.
That's also true.
Because no, you're right. Because the next 2 years she'll be probably the preseason favorite for Player of the Year in the league, and that does matter as well. I mean,
yeah.
One of the reasons why I could speak from a softball experience, Allison Kime was never an All-American. Well, one of the reasons why she wasn't was because she didn't win Pitcher of the Year because Angel Shamblin was in the freaking league at the same time from Houston.
Right.
So that hurts your cause when you're an All-American case. So I think that's another factor also to bring up is that what's hurt Melville maybe the first – not hurt her. I mean, I think she's kind of been properly placed perhaps maybe, is the fact that Jordan Thompson's been the Player of the Year the last previous 2 years. And now that if she wins maybe Player of the Year the next 2 years, that'll help her cause as well to move up in the All-American. Yeah. And I think she's warranted. I think she's the best. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think she's the best UCF volleyball player I've ever seen in person. And I think if she continues the track that she is, I think she'll end up, like you said, being the best volleyball player of all time. And, I'm looking forward. And that's the exciting thing is we'll get to see her for 2 more years.
Yeah. All right. So we've got that. And then, by the way, at some point, McKenna Melville is going to earn her place onto a UCF All-Decade team. Segue. But not yet, because right now we are doing All-Decade teams for every sport that we can possibly muster here in Black and Gold Banneret. We're going to release these after the bowl game. We just want to give you a little bit of preview.
All-Decade team. We'll find out.
Quite possibly. And we're looking for it'll be the decade of the 2010s. Actually, she probably will be on that all-decade team. But look for this after the bowl game as we head toward the holidays. Eric, you and I are going to be working on this. Murph is going to be working on it. We're getting input from everybody on the staff, and we wanted to tease that to you because like we said, it's going to be the holidays, but we're going to have some fun content for you coming out as we approach the end of the 2010s. Eric, I've taken a look at some of the ones that you've got in there. I have no disagreements with any of them, but just to give you an idea, what was the toughest call out of all of them so far?
Wow, which sport?
Any sport, you name it.
Football, obviously, there's a defensive back. Let's start with there, huh?
Yeah.
We're defensive back you, and there were some great defensive backs, including one from the NFL that's currently in the NFL. That I left off.
Yeah.
That's how good and deep the defensive backs have been at UCF this decade. That's the hardest one by far. The other one, without giving too much away, the running back position. Because I think what we saw this decade in the running back position, a lot of two-backs, the days of Kevin Smith carrying the ball every 30, 40 times are over. You had two backs splitting time a lot of the majority of this decade, so it was hard to differentiate, who's your top backs of the decade? I think those are the two in football that stood out to me that I spent a lot of time thinking about as far as tough decisions and leaving out some good players.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll be releasing those, I think, day by day, kind of, and would love to know your reaction to them.
We're really excited about this project.
Yes.
Looking forward to it. A lot of hours have been spent. As soon as Jeff sent out the group email, he kind of sucked me in on it. I pretty much, I'm not even gonna. I lost
5 minutes later. 5 minutes later, you had like 6 of them already filled out. It was crazy. I'm like, didn't you think about it for a second?
Well, the problem is I was kind of thinking about it before you brought it up. I was like, man, I wonder if I should do an article. And then, boom, you just came up. Hey, what do you think we should? Oh, wow, okay. Well, since you brought it up, this is what I got. And it was pretty amazing. Not just football. Obviously, it's going to get a lot of attention. The other sports were fascinating as well. To just go through that, and it's just the one thing we will say, and I don't know if we'll ever do. We might even do a special podcast on the decade that was.
Mm-hmm.
But best decade ever in the history of the UCF athletics.
Best decade ever.
I don't think we're breaking news with that.
Right.
And I trust a lot of incredible athletes have come over here in every sport. So I'm looking excited about that project. Look for that, as you mentioned, on Black and Gold Banneret after the bowl games are done up in Tampa. It's an exciting project. It's one of my favorite exciting projects I think we've done, and I hope people really appreciate it. I know some people are not going to be happy with us in some of the selections, right? I mean, that's always the case in these type of things, but that's what kind of makes it fun.
I know. So it's something I'm looking forward to. And you get to go back and get some great highlights. It should be a lot of fun. So we're looking forward to that. Obviously,
and we also we'll bring up for example, who's the football player of the decade? Who's the volleyball player of the decade?
Right.
Who's et cetera, et cetera. So it's gonna be interesting.
Right. So we'll have that to look forward to over the holidays, and of course that comes after the bowl game, the Gasparilla Bowl on Monday at 2:30 p.m. We will be previewing that game on a special edition of the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, which comes out Sunday morning. Probably come out actually close to Sunday lunchtime, but make sure you look out for that. Give it a quick listen. We'll have Murph on from Tampa to talk about it, and there's plenty more also coming after the game. We'll have a little debrief from it as well. So, and a wrap of the football season. Follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com. We are UCF's home on the SB Nation Network. And also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret for all the latest. And Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret as well. All right, Eric, enjoy the game. We'll talk to you on Sunday, all right?
Sounds good, Jeffrey.
All right, and thank you for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We'll catch you for the bowl preview on Sunday.